Hello, this is the second of 5 linked podcasts that look at the golden years of the Weimar Republic, 1924 to 29. The first podcast, which we've just covered, looks at Gustav Stresemann and his policy, known as the conciliatory policy, working with in particular the British and the French to present a new image of a new type of Germany that wanted now to cooperate with the British and the French, putting the past behind her, so to speak. So this podcast is looking at the third strand, which is the economic agreements that Stresemann steered through in the middle of the 1920s, which on the surface did a lot to help Germany recover and certainly improve Germany's popularity. So, two main strands here for you to know, and it really is just the question as a GCSE History student, making sure you learn the details. Do a bit of Googling, go to some good history sites like Spartacus, the History Learning Zone, etc. They're all good on the Dawes Plan and on the Young Plan. They present the information in slightly different ways, but here are the basic points, okay, the key points. And remember, also go to the Chief Examiner's Report folder. There is a model answer podcast coming up towards the end of this podcast, and it'll tell you which year it was, and go to that folder and have a look at the answer. So the Dawes Plan, first of all. Now, this was a plan that Stresemann, as Germany's foreign minister, negotiated with the Americans in 1924, and it had different strands to it. Basically, it reorganised reparation payments, and it reduced reparation payments to a fixed annual scale which Germany could afford to pay. Now, clearly, the beginning of the crisis year of 1923, it had started at the end of 1922 because Germany defaulted. In other words, she stopped paying her reparations because she couldn't pay. She couldn't manage the payments. Her economy wasn't strong enough to make those payments. And so as a result of that, the French had invaded the Ruhr, and that's shown on the map to the right. So remember, the Rhineland had been demilitarized, and so as a result of that, France was able to go right the way through the Rhineland and occupy the Ruhr, which was Germany's industrial heart, and take over the running of the factories there. That had prompted the hyperinflation. So the first thing that the Dawes Plan did is it agreed an annual scale for reparation payments which Germany could afford to pay. Year one, Germany had to pay one million marks, and then from year two onwards, it was agreed that Germany had to pay 2,500,000, 2.5 million marks a year, which is the figure there. The plan also made provision for France to gradually withdraw from the Ruhr, to pull out of the Ruhr, and to hand the Ruhr back to the German workers, to give the running of the factories back to the Germans, assuming that Germany demonstrated willingness to pay these reparations, which she did, and so the phased withdrawal of France from the Ruhr began. But most famously, the plan provided for the USA to make loans to Germany in order to kickstart the German economy. Now, what exactly does that mean? Now, remember, reparation payments were payments that Germany made to France and to Belgium, because the damage during World War I had been made to France and Belgium. Germany had invaded those countries, so that was the payments that Germany had to make. What the Dawes Plan did was set up agreements with American banks to loan Germany money. Germany could then use that money to effectively kickstart her economy. I always sort of have that image in my head when I think about this, as effectively Germany is like a motor car, and the battery has died. And when the battery in a motor car dies, basically you jumpstart it. Okay, you've got to get an injection into the motor car to get the engine running again. And that basically was what the Dawes Plan was about. It was about injecting some money into the German economy, so the factories can start producing, so Germany can start selling the products that are manufactured in the factory, which will generate money, it will generate wealth, which she can then use to pay reparations to the French and to Belgium. Now, of course, these are loans, so Germany will have to now pay money back to America in addition to paying reparations to France and Belgium. But nevertheless, if the Dawes Plan has its effect, which is to get the German economy moving again so she can make goods and then start selling them, that generated wealth should be sufficient to pay off reparations and also repay the money to the USA. So over the next 6 years, the USA loaned Germany about $3,000 million. That's the Dawes Plan. Then 5 years later, Stresemann negotiated another plan called the Young Plan with the Americans, and this plan made further changes to the reparations, which also helped Germany. Now, what it did is it reduced the annual amount to 2 million marks a year. Remember, the Dawes Plan set it at 2.5 million marks a year. So it was now reduced. She still owed the same amount of money, 6.6 billion pounds, but because the annual payments had been reduced, the plan was extended to 58 years, which would have taken Germany to the late 1980s before she would have paid it off. So less amounts per year over a longer period of time. So again, it's increasing Germany's capacity to pay reparations to the French and the Belgian. It also again looked at the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, and whereas the Dawes Plan had looked at the French occupation of the Ruhr, the Young Plan looks at the Rhineland. And remember, the Rhineland had been demilitarized. Okay. Demilitarized consisted of two strands. One, Germany was not allowed to keep any soldiers in the Rhineland. Okay, remember the Rhineland, you can see it on the map there, the green area. It still belonged to Germany, but Germany was not allowed to keep any troops there. But also, part of the provision for the Rhineland was that the French maintained an occupying force in the Rhineland as well. Remember, they'd gone into the to invade the Ruhr, they'd had to invade the Rhineland. So the French agreed to withdraw from the Rhineland as well. And a date was set for 5 years hence. Okay, so that was part of the agreement as well. There's a quick factual test. I think I pointed out to you on Friday that the last couple of questions are referring to the Young Plan. Okay, it's not that clear. So test and retest yourself. The answers are on the next slide, so pause the podcast and then check your answers. If you get any wrong, then basically play it again. You can download the factual test. The factual test is on the slideshow as well and on a Word document. They're both in the frog folder. But again, just keep working your way through these factual tests to make sure your knowledge is 100% correct. Okay. There are the answers to the factual test. Finally, model answers. So again, go to the folder, download the answer, and there is a separate podcast that looks at this question. This is a question that carries 9 marks. I pointed out on Friday that if you look at the mark scheme and the grade boundaries, you can effectively cross 2 whole grades. So, for example, you can move from a D to a B with about 8 marks, and that's really pretty much one answer. This question from June 2011 carries 9 marks, which is 13 minutes. And it said, how did the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan help Germany recover in the 1920s? So I won't take you through that answer now, but make sure you play the podcast. There's a QR code there for you as well. If you've got a QR reader on your device, just point it at the code, it will take you straight to that particular podcast. And then the second one, this one from the year 2013, sorry, there should be a 0 in there, was worth even more marks. This is a 12 marker, which is 18 minutes. So again, could you write for 18 minutes and answer that question? It says, describe the work of Stresemann in helping Germany to recover in the years 1924 to 29. So again, a structured answer broken into paragraphs is explained in that podcast. The answer can be downloaded from the folder in Frog, so download that first, print it off, and then play the podcast. And you can access that podcast using the link on the slideshow or using the QR code there. That's the end of this that's the end of this second podcast in the series. The next podcast will focus in on the fact, was Germany or had Germany recovered by 1929? Thank you.